Currently, on December 3rd, in the year 1818, Illinois became the 21st state. Illinois achieves full statehood on this day. Though Illinois presented unique challenges to immigrants unaccustomed to the soil and vegetation of the area, it grew to become a bustling and densely populated state. The prairie lands east of the Mississippi and west of Lake Michigan presented a difficult challenge to the tide of westward moving immigrants. Accustomed to the heavily forested lands of the states like Kentucky and Tennessee, the early immigrants to Illinois did not know what to make of the vast treeless stretches of the prairie. Most pioneers believed that the fertility of soil revealed itself by the abundance of vegetation it supported, so they assumed that the lack of trees on the prairie signaled inferior farmland. Those brave souls who did try to farm the prairie found that their flimsy plows were inadequate to cut through prairie sod thickly knotted with deep roots. In an age of wood, farmers also felt helpless without ready access to the trees they needed for their tools, homes, furniture, fences, and fuel. For all these reasons, most of the early Illinois settlers remained in the southern part of the state, where they built homes and farms near the trees that grew along the many creek and river bottoms. The challenge of the prairies slowed immigration into the region. When Illinois was granted statehood in 1818, the population was only about 35,000, and most of the prairie was still largely unsettled. Gradually, though, a few tough Illinois farmers took on the difficult task of plowing the prairie and discovered that the soil was far richer than they had expected. The development of heavy prairie plows and improved access to wood and other supplies through new shipping routes encouraged even more farmers to head out into the vast northern prairie lands of Illinois. By 1840, the center of population in Illinois had shifted decisively to the north, and the once insignificant hamlet of Chicago rapidly became a bustling city. The four giant prairie counties of northern Illinois, which were the last to be settled, boasted population densities of 18 people per square mile. Increasingly recognized as one of the nation's most fertile agricultural areas, the vast emptiness of the Illinois prairie was eagerly conquered by both pioneers and plows. On December 3rd, in 1912, an armistice is signed in the First Balkan War. Bulgaria, Serbia, Greece, and Montenegro signed an armistice with Turkey, ending the fighting in the First Balkan War. During the 2-month conflict, a military coalition between Greece, Serbia, Bulgaria, and Montenegro, known as the Balkan League, expelled Turkey from all the Ottoman Empire's former European possessions, with the exception of Constantinople, now Istanbul. January of 1913, a coup d'etat in Turkey led to a resumption of fighting, but the Balkan League was again victorious. In 1913, hostilities resumed after Serbia and Greece demanded that Bulgaria cede to them portions of Macedonia. Serbia and Greece formed an alliance against Bulgaria, and Macedonia was partitioned between the victors. Nationalist tension persisted in the Balkans, and Serbia was particularly bitter about being forced to give up some of its conquests by the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The signing of the Treaty of London formally ended the Balkan War on May 30th in 1913. On June 28th in 1914, hostility between Serbia and Austria-Hungary over Austria's possession of Bosnia-Herzegovina reached a breaking point when Serbian nationalist Gavrilo Princip fired live rounds at Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie in Sarajevo. Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie continued their eternity as a result. Austria-Hungary blamed the Serbian government for the attack and hoped to use the incident as justification for settling the problem of Serbian nationalism once and for all. However, as Russia supported Serbia, an Austro-Hungarian declaration of war was delayed until its leaders received assurances from German leader Kaiser Wilhelm that Germany would support their cause in the event of a Russian intervention. On July 28th, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, and the tenuous peace between Europe's great powers collapsed. Within a week, Russia, Belgium, France, Great Britain, and Serbia had lined up against Austria-Hungary and Germany, and World War I had begun. It was December 3rd in 1967 that 53-year-old Louis Washkansky receives the first human heart transplant at Groote Schuur Hospital in Cape Town, South Africa. Washkansky, a South African grocer dying from chronic heart disease, received the transplant from Denise Darval, a 25-year-old woman who was fatally injured in a car accident. Upon Denise Darval's continuance of eternity, surgeon Christian Barnard, who trained at the University of Cape Town and in the United States, performed the revolutionary medical operation. The technique Barnard employed had been initially developed by a group of American researchers in the 1950s. American surgeon Norman Shumway achieved the first successful heart transplant in a dog at Stanford University in California in 1958. After Washkansky's surgery, he was given drugs to suppress his immune system and keep his body from rejecting the heart. These drugs also left him susceptible to sickness. However, 18 days later, he continued his eternity from double pneumonia. Despite the setback, Washkansky's new heart had functioned normally until his continuance of eternity. In the 1970s, the development of better anti-rejection drugs made transplantation more viable. Dr. Barnard continued to perform heart transplant operations, and by the late 1970s, many of his patients were living up to 5 years with their new hearts. Successful heart transplant surgeries continue to be performed today, but finding appropriate donors is extremely difficult. Historic information divulged and documented outside your file can be verified on history.com.